What is up, guys? Alex from Lakey Wargames here, and welcome to the February Battlescroll 2024 Nighthaunt perspective. Now, today we only have 4 points changes and 1 rules change that affects 3 different units to look at, so it might be a bit of a short one, and it may not be the most exciting thing in the world to some people, but to me this change is absolutely awesome, and I can't wait for the potential that it brings. So let's get on into it. Alrighty, so let's jump on straight into it. No messing around today. I do apologise in advance again if I still sound a little bit weird. It's because I was really ill, then I got better, then I made some edits for some videos, just needed to do voiceovers, and then I got really sick again, and now again I'm back on a tail end of being ill. So between all my videos, I think lately I've been really sick for all the voiceovers, so I apologise for that in advance. But like I said, we're not going to mess around. Let's jump straight on into it. Let's bring up those points changes. So there's only 4 of them today, and we're going to start from the top of the list and work our way down. They're all positive changes, which is always nice to see. But one thing I do think that Games Workshop keep doing lately with Nighthaunt is they keep putting our points down, and everything just keeps getting cheaper, and it's not the real fix of the problem with the book, the tome, in my opinion. So it's like, yes, making things cheaper is good, but it's only a short-term fix. But I do have to admit that it's probably easier for them at this point, because we're so close to 4th edition, to just wait until we get another 4th edition tome, and then address all those changes in that new tome. So I guess this is better than nothing for now in that sense. But the first thing on the list is Alrich the Drowner. He's gone down 10 points to 140. Not a big whoop for a lot of people. I personally really like Alrich. Plays very heavily into my playstyle, being able to do the teleporting. I love making him the general. I love pairing him up with a Dreadblade Harrow, so you can get the double teleport for 1 CP. It plays a lot like the first Battletome that we had for Nighthaunt, where your general could teleport and you could copy and paste commands, etc. that way. So it is a very specific playstyle. I do have a video up on the channel, the Curse of the Ferryman list, and full list and explanation breakdown of how to use it. If you guys are interested in that, I'll link it in the description below. So 10 points shaved off there isn't really going to buy us anything, but 3 points are 3 points. Now Nagash has come down 40 points, and that is a lot of points to save, and to be honest, again, it's one of those where it doesn't really fix Nagash. Nagash is in this sort of nice state of, like, I like his newest scroll. It's less fighty in my opinion, but with the whole resurrection thing, bringing back destroyed units on the roll of a 3+, like, he does a lot of cool things. He's very much that support piece, and it feels like a death thing with that whole recursion and healing. But the problem I find with Nagash is even at his newer, lower points of 860 points, he just doesn't feel like he does enough reliable damage at his points cost for that. There's so many other things. You could take 860 points worth of units and do so much more work and have that board presence, where obviously Nagash is just a single entity that can only be in one place at a time, just like taking any other god unit, whether you're taking someone like Archeon, etc, blah blah blah. But the problem is, because Nagash is so magic based, it's always random. It's always, you can't guarantee the spells. You could always chance that miscast, you know. Just bad stuff happens when you rely on magic, and having Nagash cast so many spells all the time is just, yeah, I don't know. It's a hard scroll to balance, because he's either always too strong and too cheap, or he's too expensive and not good enough, and yeah, Games Workshop just hasn't found that middle ground. And we had this discussion on Discord the other day about Nagash's Warscroll, and how the fact in pretty much every other written tome he is completely different. So like, if you look in the OBR tome, to the Nighthaunt tome, to the Soulblight tome, like, it's a different Nagash every time, because yeah, they just can't seem to get that scroll just right. And I do admit it is a very difficult job to have to do, and I think they've been really scared ever since Legions of Nagash came out, and he absolutely broke everyone for an entire year. So yeah, 40 points off Nagash. I don't think it fixes him entirely, but again, it's just one of those things it's nice to see. Next up is Reikenor. Reikenor is also down 10 points to 160, a nice little change. I think Reikenor is very overshadowed at the moment because we're in that wizard season and everyone else is banking on that extra d6 roll for casting and unbinding. But I think once we come out of the General's Handbook and we go back to sort of more normality within our magic, Reikenor being able to gain access to that lovely +3 to cast through, you know, the corpse candles is going to become more valuable, and I think again having cheaper access to him is great. And I think he's very undervalued as a combat support unit, obviously being a nice source of Wave of Terror. He's got the 5 attacks with a built-in -2 rend, and if you get him into that priest or wizard, which there's a lot of those things around at the moment, then you know he's going to be swinging on them 2s and 2s with a possible rend 3 with the right Wave of Terror and a base of damage 2. You use him in conjunction with another unit and he's a very nice piece to have bolted on the side. So again, 10 points doesn't save you much, but it all adds up at the end of the day. And the last thing on our little list today is the Scriptor Mortis, also down 10 points, and to be honest that one actually does just mean nothing, because the problem with the Scriptor Mortis is it's such a flawed Warscroll. We spoke about that in the fixing the worst Nighthaunt Battletome units video. I'll link that in the description below if you want to watch that. But yeah, the Scriptor Mortis is just a poor unit across the board. His ability is kind of really cool, but it does nothing in the opening turns of the game because the chances of it going off are stupidly low, and also he only affects non-death entities, so considering how popular Soulblight Gravelords is as a competitive choice at the moment, and how popular Flesh Eater Courts are at the moment from a hobby perspective because they're, you know, they're new cool toys that have just come out, in a lot of your games he's not going to do anything anyway, and then even the games that he can affect things because you're not playing against the Death Army, he's just rubbish. So even at 100 points I wouldn't even take this guy. I mean, maybe I'd take him at 50 points, but you know, even if he was like 80, 90 points, I wouldn't look in his general direction at all, because I'd rather take another hero, and hero slots in Nighthaunt are worth everything. So yeah, that's the points changes, nothing too drastic. You know, at most we're going to save 20 points through Reikenor and Alrich. But let's get on into that juicy topic, which is up next. And there's only, like I said, it's the one rules change. It's here, it's the one in the pink. The Fright or Flight is the old one, that's why it's in black. But it's all next to each other in the cropped bit. So yeah, we're just looking at these 3 lines here in pink. And oh boy, I have seen some mixed reactions about this online. Some people are really, really excited about this, and some people are just really underwhelmed by this. And I'm in the camp of, to be honest, I am really excited about these changes, mainly for the top 2. So let's get into it. What does it say? What am I talking about on the screen in case you haven't looked up and seen it yet? Blade Guist Revenant increase the range of Tomb Great Blades to 2 inches. Dread Scythe Haridans increase the range of Scythe limbs to 2 inches. And Glaive Wraith Stalkers increase the range of Hunter's Glaive to 2 inches. Now, Glaive Wraith Stalkers, a bit like our poor Scriptor Mortis, are a little bit flawed in the sense that their scroll is just kind of I really like the damage on their weapons. They were also a unit in that Let's Fix the Worst Warscrolls in the Tome video. And maybe Games Workshop's been listening to some of these Lakey Wargames videos, because one of the things I addressed was the fact that, look at the size of the glaive, how is that a 1-inch reach weapon? And boom, now they've changed it to 2. So maybe if we keep making videos, you guys keep commenting great ideas, and I keep making the videos, Games Workshop are going to be giving us that Nighthaunt love. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. But yeah, so it's great to see those changes. Again, Glaive Wraith Stalkers aren't going to be doing that much. This only really affects them if you take them in a reinforced unit, because they come in 4s. So, you know, the first 4 aren't affected anyway because of unit coherency, and there's just not enough of them to really care with only 4. But when you take 8 and they now double layer up, they can fight in 2 ranks. So that's really nice for pushing through, again, because they have those nice 2 damage weapons. But the most exciting thing, I think, is for the Blade Guist Revenants, and that is going to be in a Scarlet Doomed army. We think back a few General's Handbooks ago when you could fight in 2 ranks. We had the whole bonds of battle thing, and it was if a model is in base-to-base contact with an enemy unit and a friendly model is in base-to-base contact with that unit, which is in base-to-base with the enemy, then you could fight. So it's basically fighting in 2 ranks as long as you were base-to-base, or it was within half an inch, like, you know, technically word for word. If we're going to go there, then yeah. Anyway, we all sort of remember that bit if we were playing back then, and this essentially brings that back. Having a 2-inch reach is awesome because 32mm bases are a pain in the backside, and this now lets us fight in 2 ranks, and everything across our army bar the poor little chain rasps or anything on a bigger base is 32mm. So now Blade Guys, Revenants and Scarlet Doom play is back because that was so super popular and really strong. We saw an absolute spike in Nighthaunt when Blade Guys were fighting in 2 ranks and dealing mortal wounds on impacts. Because don't forget, that's what Scarlet Doom does. You take the number of models in your unit after you've completed a charge with a unit of Blade Geists. You roll a dice for every model in that unit. So if you had 20 Blade Geists in a unit, you'd roll 20 dice. And for every 5+, you just deal a mortal wound to the enemy. Sort of like a mini impact charge. Then don't forget you're going to get +1 attack on your Great Blades on the turn that unit made the charge move. So they now have 3 attacks each. They're hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage. Obviously, if you're charging to proc that extra attack, you're also going to get Wave of Terror. So you're either going to make the enemy -1 to hit, you're either going to make them -1 to save, or you're going to make them strike last. Most of the time you really want that -1 save, because then you basically become 3 attacks, 3s, -2 and 1 damage, which now we're going to be fighting in 2 ranks is absolutely awesome. And if you're playing in Scarlet Doom, you're going to be doing those mortal impacts on top. Now I can kind of get it for Blade Geist Revenants because they have massive 2 Great Blades, and to be fair, they are modelled on the thing. The blades on those are absolutely massive, so fair enough if you want to give them a 2-inch reach. But one thing I did not expect to see is Dread Scythe Haridans with their Scythe limbs get a 2-inch reach, because, I mean, they just kind of seem a bit spindly and short. And it makes sense because it's kind of like a hand-to-hand, you know, fisticuffs kind of thing. I mean, they've got some nice pincers on there, I guess, but yeah, I wouldn't see them as a 2-inch reach type weapon, but they now have it, so there we go. Again, it just counters the fact that they're stuck on 32mm bases. They come in 10s, so right off the bat, even in a minimum sized unit, half of them are absolutely useless, because until they drop to 6 models or less because of coherency, you can't actually fight with the back rank. Dread Scythe Haridans aren't the best profile in the world. With the hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, they have no built-in rend and only 1 damage. But the best thing about Dread Scythe Haridans is they have 4 attacks at base, so they absolutely throw buckets of attacks at people. They do get a built-in +1 to hit and wound, only if a unit has been hurt earlier in that turn. And I think one of the nice things about them, a lot of people are probably going to think, you know, Dread Scythe Haridan spam, because wards are more of a thing these days. A lot of people go to Quicksilver Dead, because then Haridans in Quicksilver Dead ignore all ward saves, so you're throwing buckets of attacks on top of people. A lot of people that play into that style will use the Purple Sun, because the Purple Sun, you know, gives that -1 save aura, which we don't care about because we're ethereal, so you can't minus us through that. And then also with your Wave of Terror stacking on top, you can essentially build the Haridans to have that -1, -2, -3 rend in the right situations, combined with the buckets of attacks. And if you were able to hurt them earlier in the turn, whether that be you shot someone with a Craven Throne Guard, or anything like that, you could deal some damage from afar. Now they become 3s and 3s like the Blade Geists do. They have more attacks, and they have the rend. It's a lot of hoops to jump through, but you can stack them up. You know, Blade Geists are more plug and play. Haridans require more of a setup, but you can reap greater rewards when you do. And now being able to get more of those attacks per model and fight in 2 ranks is going to be absolutely awesome. Like I said, a lot of people will gravitate towards that Quicksilver Dead style of play, but to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if we now see Haridans pop up in Scarlet Doom styled lists. So for example, you could take like a unit of Blade Geist Revenants, you charge them in. You take a unit of Haridans, you charge those in. The Blade Geists are going to be dealing mortal wounds on impact, which alone off themselves can then trigger the Haridans to get their murderous bloodlust, to get their +1 hit, +1 wound. And then, obviously, with all your Wave of Terrors, etc., you can stack them both up, and you can get the best of both worlds out of all of them. So the Blade Geists are going to bring in more consistent quality attacks, and then your Haridans are going to be there in support, easily procced up because of the Scarlet Doom effect off the Blade Geists. But now you can also get buckets of attacks, even just from 10 Haridans, because at 4 attacks each, if all 10 of them make it in, which isn't that hard to do, because you just need, 5 Blade Geists in base and 5 Haridans in base, and then you can now layer them up with that nice 2-inch reach. You're going to be throwing 40 attacks off of 10 Haridans, or 41 attacks, because you get an extra one for the champion. And the same with your Blade Geist, you're going to get 30 Blade Geist attacks. I know that isn't quite copy and paste across, because once you start killing things with impacts, depending where your opponent pulls the models, etc, etc. But if you were to, say, flank something with a really big base, like an Alarial, or say even something on the size of like a Black Coach style base, and you can charge it from both sides, you're coming from the left and the right, which with flying and retreating and charging and just being Nighthaunt in general isn't that hard to do. 41 attacks from one unit and 30 from another is an absolute redonkulous amount of attacks, as well as you're going to be doing those 10 impact hits, and then helping each unit proc their own. And I think it's just going to be absolutely awesome. And the people that are saying that this kind of isn't really a big deal is just absolutely mad to me, because I remember back when the Scarlet Doom started taking off, and Nighthaunt had a really good run in that General's Handbook purely to opening that door. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a resurgence in that. Again, wards are more prevalent now than they were then, but again, we can now combine the fact that we can stack up so much anti-save abilities, combined now with mortal wounds through Scarlet Doom, as well as all the other tricks that we have. Everything is now so much cheaper. Back then, Blade Geist Revenants were so much more expensive per unit. I think they were up to like 170, I want to say, and they're now down to like 150. So 20 points per 10 is actually quite a lot once you start stacking them all together. You got to think of that in terms of, you take 5 units of Blade Geist Revenants, you've saved yourself 100 points, and that pays for that nearly pays for like a whole Spirit Torment or something like that, which then returning slain Blade Geist 3 at a time at the end of each combat phase just adds up to equaling more and more and more value. Now, one thing that does confuse me slightly with this change is what is going to happen to those poor Grimas Reapers, because they don't have the best quality of attacks. They're not as consistent as the Blade Geist Revenants. They don't have as many attacks as the Dread Scythe Haridans. But the nice thing about the Grimas Reapers is they were that nice middle ground. They've got a little bit of rend, but they don't hit as well. They don't have as many attacks, but they had the 2-inch reach. That was their thing. So then you could take 20 of them, and then you'd be fine in that sort of big blobbed up fight. I know that they don't need to proc their bonus off of charging, so that is like the only thing they have now going for them, is as long as you're fighting more than 5 models and you're in the thick of that fight, you're going to be getting that +1 attack, which is something that Revenants can't do. Revenants are always better on your own turn, charging in, getting that Wave of Terror, adding that Whirling Death attack, and then on the enemy's turn they feel a little bit worse because you lose all of those nice bonuses. So Grimas are a bit more consistent in that sense. But their profile just isn't standing up to compared to the others, especially now that they're all on that 2-inch reach, and Grimas Reapers taking those in numbers just doesn't feel as great as it once did, and they also don't have any cool sub-factions to play into like the others do with Scarlet Doom and Quicksilver Dead, which can be kind of said is a nice thing if you take them in something like Emerald Host, etc, etc. But then with all the others now having a 2-inch reach, it's like you can also just take them as well. And I guess there would be the one argument that Grimas Reapers are battle line built in, whereas the others are only battle line if you take them as part of their sub-faction. So for example, Blade Geists are only battle line if you're playing Scarlet Doom. So again, if you go into something like an Emerald Host, Grimas Reapers can help you there. But to be honest, with how good and popular Hex Wraiths are at the moment, and obviously how key Spirit Hosts bodyguarding our heroes are, already filling out the battle line, and that if you really wanted to, you could just take some cheap minimum unit of chain rafts who are great for just standing around an objective or being a screen, something like that. I just don't see the point of paying the extra points for the Grimas Reapers now, and I just think that this opens the floodgate really to Scarlet Doom more than ever, or again that Quicksilver Dead playstyle, depending on how your local meta shakes out and how much ward saves you are needing to chew through at the time of building your list. But I would love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments down below, am I just rambling away like a madman? Is Scarlet Doom really going to come back, or is it just kind of wishful thinking back to that General's Handbook when we were more high flying and before we ended up back down here? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget that you can join the Discord to carry the discussions even further and show off your awesome hobbiness. Also, if you've enjoyed this video and you wish to see more things like this, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. It really helps the algorithm push through to more people, so more people can see this content, both supporting the channel and allowing me to see that you guys really enjoyed this. All the links to my other social medias can be found in the description below for Instagram, Facebook, my Discord. And you can also support me even further if you wish to by checking out my eBay store, where you can buy yourself some more awesome hobby goodness. And I have links to my Patreon down below, where I have more exclusive content and is also the best revenue stream directly to support me that extra little bit further if you wish to. But with all that said and done, I'd just like to thank you for staying tuned and watching. As always guys, stay safe and happy wargaming.